listening room, the hearing room. Express yourself and have your say. Hearing room, a listening room. You're welcome here, so have no fear. The hearing room, the hearing room. Come in, my friend, where art can bloom.
And welcome to the Woodshed podcast. I'm Aaron Tornberg, and I'm here today with Erin Sullivan. And Erin, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Erin. Thanks for having me here.
No problem, and we'll talk soon. But first, I'm going to talk about, you guessed it, the hearing room. We have lots of stuff going on here. Monday night, as you know, probably, is the podcast. So we do the podcast live on Monday night, except for when we have the Blues Jam, which is the second Monday. Every other time, Monday night is the live night for the podcast. And then we do Tuesday open mic. There is an open mic from 7 to 10 on Tuesday. We do Let's Have Words, which is the spoken word evening. That's 7 to 10 on Wednesday. We do the Singin' Jam on Thursday, which is the event where everybody comes and plays together, looks at the screen with chords and words on it, and everybody can join in. So it's kind of a fun time. It's a jam. And, it's sort of like that Planet Fitness thing, no judgment zone at the Singin' Jam. So come in any skill level, and you can have a great time, learn a lot from other musicians. And then Friday night, we're also going to start doing a lot of jams. We have some. I'm doing a jam this Friday night. It's the acoustic jam. It was the Irish jam. It is no longer Irish exclusively, although if you want to play Irish music, no one's stopping you. But it is not an Irish jam anymore. It's an acoustic jam. We are strictly acoustic. That means nothing that plugs in will be allowed. We don't have mics. We don't have anything except I might allow a bass guitar to be plugged in if I have the control. So basically, don't expect to come and blow out the room, okay? But it's going to be a fun night, particularly if you like acoustic music, because that's truly what it's going to be. We also have other nights that will be much more electric. For example, there is coming up in March a Pink Floyd jam. So we're going to have Pink Floyd night, and everybody can come and pick their favorite Pink Floyd psychedelic song, and you can jam on it. And then we also have other events going on Friday nights regularly. The third Friday is the Bluegrass Jam. And then we aren't sure what we're doing with the fourth Friday yet, so we'll keep you informed. But all of this information is available on hearingroom.net. And then we have Saturday night. There's a lot of different events that happen regularly. You should check the website to find out more, but one of the popular ones is our quarterly drone night. We have electronic music sometimes, and we also have regular performances on Saturdays, so keep an eye out at hearingroom.net. On Sundays, we have Drum Circle from 12:30 to 1:30. We have the open mic that I run 2 to 5 on Sunday. And the open mic is a song circle, so you can sit around and jam with everybody else. And we also want to thank the Greenville Junction Shop, who sponsor the show, who help the Hearing Room financially and do other things to generally make it a better place. The Greenville Junction Shop is located in Greenville, New Hampshire, and in Clinton, Massachusetts. The Greenville Junction Shop is spelled Greenville, Greenville, Junction, Junction, Shoppe, Shoppe, the Greenville Junction Shoppe. That's how you'll remember it. And it's a great place to get your upcycled items. There is furniture, household appliances, electronics, all kinds of cool stuff you can find, and it's on Facebook. They also have a website, greenvilljunction with the K.com. So greenvilljunction.com, you can check that out. And keep an eye out on the Facebook page for more info on the Greenville Junction shop. They have the Facebook page, and they have items on Facebook Marketplace, so you can kind of go shopping online before you go to the actual location. And they will have a showroom pretty soon, I understand. So anyway, it's all upcycled, it's all found stuff, and they also do estate cleanout and garage cleanout. So check out the Greenville Junction shop. And now we are here with Erin Sullivan. So Erin, how are you?
I'm great, Erin. Every time you say Erin, I'm going to say Erin back to you.
Erin.
It's fun.
Erin.
Or
Aaron. Yeah.
It can just be Erin.
Yeah. I say Erin and I don't differentiate.
No, I don't either.
So
No.
it's my name. Don't wear it out.
Same.
Yeah. So tell me where you grew up.
So I guess the easy answer to that is I am currently and mostly from Harvard, Massachusetts.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I'm currently and mostly grown up. But...
Well, that also. But at my early childhood, we actually bounced back and forth a fair amount between Massachusetts and Northern California and Scotland, and then ended up in Harvard when I was 11, and I graduated from high school there. Couldn't wait to get out of town, and spent a bunch of years living in New York and Los Angeles. And then suddenly, once you have kids, you realize that maybe living in that small town wasn't quite so bad after all. So a few years ago, we moved back to Harvard, living around the corner from my mom, and re-embedded in a small town and just loving it.
Do you know Lou Reed's song about the small town?
I don't.
That he did on an album, Songs for Drella, with John Cale. He did this album growing up in a small town. You should definitely check that out.
Yeah.
And his line is, "No one famous ever came from here." So,
well, I think that's true for me too.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Except for John Cougar Mellencamp. But
there you go.
So you came across music how? Because you got involved at some point.
Right. So I would say that the early part of my life was really due to my grandmother. She was a huge factor in music in my childhood. She was trained as an opera singer and left the Midwest to go live in New York during the war and sing in the USO clubs, and auditioned for Broadway and was cast in the original Broadway production of Oklahoma back when it was called Green Grow the Lilacs, and left right before the show opened to go marry my grandfather, but ended up spending the rest of her life teaching music and teaching singing, and so that was always a huge factor in my interest in music, and she gave me piano lessons and voice lessons. So that was sort of, I would say, how things started, but I didn't really do a whole lot of songwriting until I graduated from college. I was doing music through school and singing a cappella and singing in choirs. But once I graduated from college, I moved to New York and was living by myself in a studio that was 6 feet by 12 feet. It was tiny.
I thought my apartment was small.
No, it was really, really tiny and very sweet, and I loved it. But there wasn't room for very much besides me and a guitar. So I was teaching third grade during the day, and then I'd come back to my little apartment, and I had my guitar, and I knew exactly 3 chords, and started writing, and ended up reconnecting with a good friend of mine from college, who it turned out was just beginning to write music as well. And so we decided to start singing together, and we formed a duo, which ended up becoming a band. And so she and I started playing out and actually found a fair amount of success. Our band was called Edith O, and we ended up playing out at some great clubs, and it was the 90s, and there was a kind of folk pop resurgence, so I think our timing was pretty good. So we were at the Bitter End, we were at CBGB's Gallery, not to be confused with the CBGB's next door, and Sidewalk Cafe, and a bunch of other places, and we ended up recording an album, and it was a really exciting time. And so I was, doing my teacher stuff during the day and doing the music stuff at night. Most of the time, I was able to keep those worlds separate. There were a couple of occasions where we would show up at the Bitter End to do a show, and the front row would be taken by my third grade students.
That's always interesting.
So that was where my street cred was a little besmirched. But it was really, it was a very fun time. And we ended up recording this record and had a record release party set at the Bitter End, and had label interest back in the days when there was such a thing as labels being interested.
Yeah.
So it was a big deal, and it felt like it was going places. But meanwhile, I was getting married and getting pregnant, and the whole time we were recording an album, I was also gestating a human. And so
That's a challenge.
That summer, my daughter was born, and the album was in the final throes of production. And one day, it'd been a hot summer day, and Emma was, 5 weeks old, and it was like one of those cranky, sweaty days where she was like mostly grumpy, and I was mostly grumpy, and nobody was sleeping, and it was feeding and changing and feeding and changing. And 7 o'clock had come, and I'd put her down, and she was asleep, and I was relaxing, and the phone rang, and it was Amy on the phone saying, "Erin." I said, "Yeah?" She said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at home with my baby." And she said, "We'll go on in 10 minutes. And I had forgotten to go to my record release party.
Oops.
Who forgets to go to a record release party?
Did you run over there?
No, I was in Queens, so that was it.
Oh.
And so it became Amy's origin story, because it was at that moment, poor woman, she was there with a packed house and all these, people who were interested in us, and she ended up doing a solo show and doing an amazing job. And my husband and my daughter and I ended up moving out to Los Angeles later that summer, and we went our separate ways. And she went on, and she's done amazing stuff.
And what's her name?
Her name is Amy Spees, and are you familiar with her music at all? She's incredible. She has a new album out called Me and the Ghost of Charlemagne. This past weekend, I'm sorry, I'm plugging someone else, but I'm just excited for her. She just won Best International Song of the Year at the UK Americana Awards.
Oh, that.
And she's I just think one of the best songwriters out there.
Well, she want to come on the podcast?
I'll see next time she comes to Massachusetts. She's based in Nashville now. So, so that was sort of the end of what I was doing for music in New York, and at that point, I pretty much turned my attention to teaching and education full time, and I wrote a handful of songs on the side over the next bunch of years. But that was pretty much it until about 2 years ago, and so it's exciting for me to kind of get my feet back in the water and start becoming part of a music community again.
So, when you were younger, did you dream of doing music, or was it just, a thing with your grandmother that you did?
No, I was definitely one of those, like, go in, shut the door, and, like, sing songs to the wall and imagine yourself with the microphone and the whole schlemiel, definitely. Mm-hmm. And I've always been kind of a creative person, and I have loved words and loved writing and loved music. So even though I wasn't really writing songs till I was in my 20s, all of those pieces were swirling, I think.
Mm-hmm. And did you said you had some time in Scotland. What was that for? So
my dad, I like to call him an itinerant physicist. as if that were a thing. But
I am a rolling physicist. Exactly. Yeah, okay. That's a song.
Sure. So he was doing PhD work at Harriet Watt University in Edinburgh. So we moved there for 2 years, basically from when I was about 7 to when I was about 9. And it was totally formative. And I was there when I was young enough to want to really just sort of integrate with my new world. And they sent me to the local village school, and I developed a very passable brogue.
Yeah, can you still do it?
I'm not doing it on radio.
It's not radio, it's a podcast.
It's one of those things where if I'm around Scottish people, I find myself mimicking those mouth sounds again, and then I'm worried that it sounds like I'm trying to make fun of them, but I just can't help myself. So
yeah, you don't do Scotty from Star Trek or anything like that?
No.
So you liked Scotland? Did you go back?
Oh, I loved it. I went back during my college years, and that I haven't been back since then. Just again, life has gotten in the way, and not in a bad way, but life has just gotten busy, and so there hasn't been really the time or the resources to get back over there.
Well, did you go to the Edinburgh Festival when you were there?
I did go to the Edinburgh Festival.
I have been to Scotland once, and that's what I did.
Oh, yeah. I was there, and this will date me. I was there the year that Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson were still married, and they did a production of King Lear together. And I remember seeing that and just thinking it was the best thing I'd ever seen.
I don't think that was... I was there in 89, I think.
Oh, I think I was there the year after you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw... Robin Lang, who was a folk singer from Scotland, and he had some amazing songs that I still do. The best was Birkenhair. He did a song about Birkenhair. But yeah, that's a fun time. Is of the festivals in the world you can go to, that's one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah.
They have stuff at 9 a.m.
Yeah, it's constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking back on my time in Scotland, it was also formative just because at that point in my life, I was a big reader. I still am a big reader. And their children's literature is kind of amazing. And so I read and I read and I read. And I was reading all these great stories based in the UK. And I think that sensibility just sort of got stuck in my head and has stayed with me.
So you're actually an author of children's books, too.
Yes, good segue.
Yeah.
I am, in fact. When I was teaching in New York, I had a colleague who came to me one day and said, someone's asked me if they want to do this curriculum guide, but I'm not really interested. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So it turned out that at that point, there were lots of people who liked to write curriculum guides, but not a lot of people who liked to write about math. And I loved math. And so I got into this weird niche where I started doing just straight ahead kind of third grade math curriculum. And then at one point it morphed into a different niche where imagine if you're teaching in a third grade classroom, you need to talk about science or social studies, but you also want to be talking about teaching language arts at the same time. So you need a book about the moon that teaches all the content that they need to learn about the moon, but it also can be written at a third grade level so that you're teaching the language arts component. So that's what I was doing, is I was writing books about a certain topic area, but at a certain grade level. And so I loved it. It was an opportunity to do a deep dive into research on these really kind of micro topics. So, for example, the first one I did was called Math on the Moon, and it was finding all the ways to teach kids about the moon from the perspective of doing math problems, which for a dork like me is like a dream come true.
It sounds interesting.
It was really fun. I think my favorite one was a book that I wrote, and you can find it on the Google, called Taking a Bath in Ancient Rome. And it was all about the Roman plumbing. That was the topic, and why somebody thought that was going to be a content strand that was necessary to teach. But the challenge is, just go there with me for a minute. If you're going to teach about Roman plumbing, what's the first question people are going to ask?
I don't know.
Is pooping.
Oh, pooping. Okay.
Right?
Yes.
And so how do you write about going to the
If
bathroom?
you're in third grade, that is.
Yes,
yes,
absolutely. So how do you write about going to the bathroom in a way that it's going to make it into a classroom and not be disposed of because it's not appropriate? So you got to walk a really fine line.
That is a challenge.
Yeah. So anyway, so those were super fun. The other valuable life lesson I learned from writing those books, was the danger of the personal bio. So you know how you always like to ask artists for advice. So I don't really have any good advice for musicians, but I do have good bio advice, which is always be aware.
Musicians can use that.
Always be aware where your bio is going to end up. So for the very first book I wrote, Bath on the Moon, they asked me to write a bio, and I was so excited. You get to write your first author's bio. So I wrote all this fancy stuff at the beginning about my impressive credentials, and then I thought it'd be cute to tie it into the title of the book. So I wrote, when she's not dreaming about the moon, Erin likes to blah, 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 blah. Well, what I didn't realize is that they were just going to use that bio as boilerplate text for every single book that I proceeded to write for them for the next 3 years. So math at the Olympics, math in ancient Rome. It was all when she's not dreaming about the moon on the back of the book. So I look like a crazy person.
Yeah, you're a werewolf, apparently.
Apparently, Erin is always dreaming of the moon.
Wow. So be careful what you write.
That's exactly right. It's all about context.
Yeah. And there was one you had on there that I was interested in particular. It's the one about music. So
music counts?
Yeah. What is that?
Well, music is math, and math is music, right?
Okay.
That, if you're just looking at notation and the way things are broken down in terms of measures and beats per measure and counts and rests, you can do all kinds of super awesome nerdy math just by looking at musical notation. So that's pretty much what that book was about.
Is that that's a more recent one, I think.
I think that is one
was
of the more recent ones.
2011 or something?
Yeah.
And are you writing more?
Well, sadly, the pendulum has swung, and there was this beautiful golden era where there was a lot of demand for these leveled readers. And in recent years, the pendulum has swung to standardized testing. So the same publishing companies are coming to me, but instead of wanting me to write books about actual things, they are wanting me to write endless multiple choice questions so that kids can practice standardized testing. And it's soul crushing. I just can't do it.
It's awful.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to some things that are happening in schools where I feel like teachers don't have the autonomy that they once had to actually create curriculum that kids really get excited about and feel like is meaningful to them.
That's why I like teaching after school programs.
Well, there you go.
Because you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not tied to you must do this because they have to pass the test because our funding depends on it, So, all right, we've gone the whole show without a song so
Thank
far.
you. Good night. That was great.
So let's hear a song.
Okay. So you know what? I'm going to do the song about my grandma.
Okay. Well, that's a good one to start with.
Okay. Here we go.
And get all set up there.
Yep. So my grandmother was a Dorothy Foose. And
how do you spell that?
Foose. And she was very, very, very happily married to... Where's my capo? Oh, there it is. She was very happily married to my grandfather for many years. And so despite the fact that she gave up this career in New York, I don't think she ever had any regrets. But I realized once I was a grown-up that she was always just my grandmother, and I admired her and thought that everything she did was great, but I never really got the stories about her time in New York or any of the other things that she did before she became a wife. And so this is my song of questions for her.
it feel to be a daughter late in life to a mother who was sure she didn't want to be a wife? What'd you say to your Irish-eyed dad, who always seemed so silent and sad? And what was it like to know you could sing and know that was the most important thing? When courage was the chords on a piano. And how'd it feel to board that train, your hands against the window pane, and say goodbye to Gary, Indiana? How'd it feel to stand on that stage, the light in your eyes, your hands shaking on the page, and your voice maybe trembling with all you could feel, and those men in the dark saying your dreams were real? And what'd you think when that boy sauntered in and undid you with his lazy grin? You could almost hear your mother sigh with pity. What'd you say when you turned in your keys to your tiny room and your melodies, and said goodbye to dreams of New York City? And how'd it feel to have a love so vast that you almost didn't mind what you left in the past? And what'd you say each time he wanted to move and left you in a new place with something to prove? Did you give your all at a talent show, or blow the back walls out in another church solo, exhausted by the effort of believing? And in each new room, what did you put on the shelf to remind you that you were still yourself, despite all of the places you were leaving? Who told you all the dreams of playing in a band? And what was the advice that died on your lips as the songs poured out of her fingertips? And how'd you know that the best you could do was to tell her that she had to see it through, while inside your mind was teeming with the stories of a girl who felt like she was still 19 when her eyes were blue and her slate was clean, sitting on a train from Gary, dreaming of future glories? Man, I wish I'd thought to ask you for your stories. How I wish I'd asked you for your stories.
Thanks.
Very nice. So, how long did you know your grandmother? Was she alive into your adulthood?
Oh, yeah. She didn't pass away till 2001, so she was around for a long time, and she actually got to see me sing with my band.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so she was an important part of lots of phases of my life.
Mm-hmm. So, when you went from education back to doing music,
mm-hmm.
what was the catalyst for that?
Well, so I'm still doing education. I'm still working in a school.
Right.
But
right.
I think for me, the big part has just been, well, two things. I think one is time. And, my kids are older, and there's a little more flexibility in how our days run, and I feel a little less guilty about abandoning everybody back at my house. And I think the other part was I was just really, really missing it. And I had always thought of myself as a musician and a songwriter, and one day I just kind of looked at my guitar and I realized I hadn't picked it up in a while, and it made me sad. So that was one part. And then I think the big catalyst was 3 years ago now, we went up to a camp in New Hampshire called the World Fellowship Center. And we were there as part of a ukulele festival week, which is something that I'm excited to talk about later. But the camp itself, the week was really open to a lot of the ukulele activities and the lessons, and it was very fun. But there were also lots of people there who were just there to enjoy the other aspects of the camp, which is really focused on social justice, and they've got some really amazing social justice programming. And so while I was up there, I made a new friend, which when you're a grown-up is hard to do.
It is.
And my new friend Joya Mukherjee is a very talented musician. And we sat down, we started playing guitars together. And all of a sudden, this joy came flooding back. And I remembered how much I loved doing music. And I think Joya had the same experience. And for the first time in a long time, I had a new friend to go do music with. And so we set ourselves the goal of going to an open mic that year. And so that January, we went to John Ferullo's open mic up at PCA in Westford.
Yeah. You just reminded me, I got to get John to come on a show. I keep saying I'm going to, and I keep forgetting. He's great.
Yeah, and he was just so welcoming and inclusive. And I was terrified of going back to sort of an open mic situation. I hadn't played publicly in years and years and years. And I remember sending John that initial email, and he emailed me right back and said, please come. And it was so welcoming when I showed up, and Joy and I came and we did our 2 songs, and everybody was so kind, and Joy and I just had a blast. And so I think that was a real motivator for us to keep doing music. And it really was an amazing introduction to the open mic community here in New England. And the past year and a half or so, I've just had a blast going to the different open mics and getting to know people. And over the months and seeing different songwriters come up with new pieces and sharing them and kind of getting to know what everybody's different styles are. And it's a really inspiring group to be part of.
Yeah. So, do you play with Joy then a lot? Or?
We haven't played together in a while. We've had a couple of gigs out, which were super fun. And she's living in Boston, I'm out in Harvard, and we both get pretty busy, so it's right. Hard to do. But we meet up every summer at ukulele camp, and there's a lot of music that happens there. And so she is not a ukulele player, but she's a great guitar player. So we've got that going on, and 9 gazillion ukuleles, and some mandolins and some other great instruments.
You got a ukulele song?
I do have a ukulele
song. Oh, let's do that.
So what I will tell you about ukulele camp is,
yes.
It was started, the Week's Festival was started maybe 5 years ago by our good friends Dan and Molly Watt. And I want to be them when I grow up. They're amazing. But they are stepping back this year, and my husband Dano and I are taking over. So Dano Sullivan, my husband, is a ukulele teacher and runs the Ukulele Union of Boston. And so together, I'm only a very mediocre at best ukulele player. Dano is an excellent ukulele player. But I kind of run the songwriting end of things. But we're doing our week in July. And the web address is mountainuke.com for anybody who wants to check it out and join us.
Does he write songs too?
He does not write, but he's a great player. All right, so here's a song. This is the first song I wrote.
Okay.
In 2017 after a very long dry spell. And the deal was I didn't care if I used the stupidest rhymes in the world. I just had to write something. This is an example of not second guessing yourself. One summer evening, I went out walking. The breeze was breezy, the moon was bright. Then out of nowhere, between the treesies, a fairy pinprick, a flash of light. Despite my wishing for that light to stay, those fireflies just faded away. I've learned you can't stare at fireflies, you'll miss their spark.
Sometimes a sideways glance works better in the dark. You know you gotta grab at happiness, but still I think you'll find that life's best moments sometimes sneak up from behind. A winter morning, December window, the snow reflecting a sky so blue, the silver crystals between my mullions, a frozen gamble, a millionaire's view. And though I'd like to keep this art till June, I know it will be gone by noon. I've learned you can't ask the sun to never melt the frost. Sometimes the beauty's in the moment lost. You know you gotta grab at happiness, but still I think you'll find that life's best moments sometimes sneak up from behind. The color of the autumn leaves will fade. You'll lose that spiky jolt from that cup of coffee you made. Linen will crinkle, your face will wrinkle. Remember, life is sweet, 'cause it's gone in a heartbeat. I am a mother, my kids are awesome. They think I'm cheesy, but that's alright. Being a mother is not so easy. The awkward silence, the pop-up fight, but then there's moments of unbridled grace. Adulthood in your baby's face. I've learned you can't force your kids to say they love you so. Sometimes a speedy hug's enough to know. You know you gotta grab at happiness, but still I think you'll find that life's best moments sometimes sneak up from behind. Just like my husband, life's best moments sometimes sneak up from behind. Thanks.
So I like that last line. Does your husband like that last line?
He wrote that last line.
Yeah, that makes sense. I empathize. I'm going to play that for my wife tonight and say, see, it's not just me.
Exactly.
So the ukulele camp, what were you starting with guitar when you started playing out, and you just picked up ukulele?
Oh, yeah. So I am self-taught on the guitar and still have a long way to go as a guitar player. But there are approximately 15 ukuleles in my house at any one time, and so it's pretty much impossible to not pick up a ukulele and play it at one point or another.
Yeah, there's one in the bathroom for guests.
Exactly.
And yeah, okay.
Exactly.
That's good. They're a lot cheaper than guitars.
They are, and it's kind of it's instant gratification for folks who are desperate to make music and have never actually formally learned an instrument. There's a lot you can do with the ukulele pretty quickly, and then you can do a much deeper dive and become an expert, and then you get to be somebody like Rayanne Richards, who's just so talented and
Right.
creates such beautiful sounds out of her ukulele. It's amazing. So yeah, there's my answer.
And I actually have a friend who has a very interesting one. It's 6 strings ukulele.
Oh, wow.
So it's like kind of like a 12-string where it's doubled, but only 2 of the strings are doubled.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bigger one. It's like a, I don't know if it's a bass. It's like a baritone or something. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the ukuleles are interesting. Because
it's an interesting instrument. It's a great instrument for kids to get started on with music. That was the first instrument that our daughter learned, and then moved from there on to the guitar.
Is ukulele still a thing for young girls to start with at open mics? Because for a while I think it was like a thing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of held its own. It was red hot there for a second. I don't know that it's quite as red hot as it was, but I think... and a lot of schools are bringing in the ukuleles instead of recorders.
That's actually cool.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's great.
Although my son got a recorder, but He's very happy with it.
Yeah. I always kind of liked recorder.
Yeah. Well, I actually got a Vivaldi concert when I went to Italy. There was a CD of a Vivaldi recorder.
Wow.
And so it's like a recorder concerto. And it's actually really good. So you can do a lot with it.
No, you can't. Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm glad that they're doing ukulele. I think it's a little more flexible and approachable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ukulele players are pretty awesome. They are a very collegial group and very supportive. And ukulele players typically don't love to solo. They just love to play in clumps. And so if you get, I'm sure, there's like names for different kinds of herds of animals. I'm sure that there's a word for a group of ukulele players, but I don't know what it is. But they gather and they're so happy to be playing together. And every year when I go up to camp, I'm always just amazed at how people are so welcoming and so supportive of each other's efforts to learn and teaching each other songs that they're working out, and it's fun.
I think you should talk to Dano about doing a hearing room ukulele jam.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
He does a ukulele jam in Harvard Square every year, right where the Center for Adult Ed is.
Yes.
Right across from the Ed School.
Right.
And it usually draws about 100 people for this night.
That's not a big space.
No, and it's pretty astonishing. They're all crammed in there playing ukuleles all at once, and it's something to behold. But we should definitely do one here.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, ukulele. There's a few people I know who really are proponents of using the ukulele for songwriting and for doing music. I can think of a few right off the bat. So, so you've been recording an album.
I have. I've been recording an album with Doug Hortler over at Hollow Body Studios.
Yeah, which is where I'm recording, incidentally.
Yeah, and I cannot say enough awesome things about how great the experience has been. It's been so exciting and so much fun, and Doug is really, really good at what he does.
Did you listen to his show?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yep.
It's a good show.
Yeah, it's a great episode.
He and Susan are great.
Yeah. But I think that the great thing is he's just so good at listening to my very ill-expressed ideas, because I'll say, I'm kind of imagining a blah, blah, blah with some blah, blah, blah on top. And then he'll present a draft, and it's got all these great elements plus things that I wouldn't have even considered or thought of, but it rounds out the sound of the piece. So I'm really excited. We have a few more songs to do, and I know that there are lots of other steps at the end, but I'm hoping that in the next little while later this year it'll come out.
I imagine it will.
I imagine it will.
And by the way, Doug recorded the theme song for the Woodshed podcast, the hearing room song that I wrote. That's the theme song for this, and it was just me and guitar until Doug came in and did the guitar solos and the licks and all the stuff he did. So it was quite different when he got done with it, and I really like it. That's why we use it on the show. I think it's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
So, Doug's great.
Who does the whistling on it?
I do, and then Doug doubles it. So Doug did.
That's a tall order.
Yeah.
A good recording whistle is a hard thing to do.
Yes, it is. My recording was not as good as both of us together. It really was. He has good taste.
Strength in numbers.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a short break here and talk about the hearing room a little bit, because we need members. The hearing room is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 officially, and we don't have a lot of income. Because mostly we're here for musicians who want to come and play together. And that's not often enough to really cover just the cost of rent and heat and electricity and all that stuff. So what we do is we ask people who are regulars at the hearing room, or even if you're irregulars at the hearing room but you like it, if you would consider a membership, because a membership is $100 a year. And what that allows is for us to pay our rent and to turn on the lights and to do all of the things besides actually buy equipment, which is a whole other thing that is not part of membership. Membership is for keeping us open. And so if you are so inclined, you can become a member by going to the website, and you can pay $100 per year. And you can also pay more than $100 per year if you wish to kick in a little extra to help out. And it is a good thing to do because you are helping to build the community. And that's what the Hearing Room is all about. It's about music community. And we also give you a t-shirt, which says the Hearing Room on it, obviously. And then a membership card, which gets you bragging rights that you have a card in your pocket. That is an official Hearing Room card with a membership number and everything. And it is made from recycled, what is it? It's not plastic. It's like imitation plastic, so it's good for the environment. So everything we do here, we try to be careful about the environment as well. And we also we want to support the community in general and make sure that people can come here and that they don't have to necessarily pay a lot of money to show up, that you can come here. And there is, for some people, no alcohol is a great thing. And we don't have any, so people come here and they can not drink, which is a hard thing to do as well. Because a lot of times people who don't drink don't have as many places to hang out. So we have a lot of cool stuff here. And you should check it out at hearingroom.net. And we also want to thank the Greenville Junction Shop. Speaking of recycling, they are upcycling. They're taking items that they've found from the side of the road, from estate sales, garage sales, from other sales of all kinds, and they make it into something that's usable. And as I've said many times, I do shop there. I just got a big table because my son's birthday is tomorrow, and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, and we needed a nice table so that we could play Dungeons and Dragons at our table. That was thanks to the Greenville Junction Shop, and it was $30 for a really nice table that folds up and the whole deal. And I also have gotten a computer from them. It was inexpensive, required a little elbow grease, and it's like new. So you can do all kinds of things at the Greenville Junction Shop that will better your life. So check out Greenville, Greenville, Junk, Junktion, Junction, Shoppe, Shoppe. They're on Facebook and also at greenvillejunction.com. So we are back now with Erin Ash Sullivan. So what are you doing with the recording in terms of promotion? Do you?
That is such a good question, Erin.
Yeah.
I am just at the beginning stages of all this, so I've actually been listening really closely to your other podcast episodes just to kind of hear how other people are cracking the nut. It's really interesting to be just sort of putting things together and reading other people's websites and just doing some research online to try to figure out, where do you send your music to get people to listen to it, to have them review it. Where are there songwriting contests where you can send your music to be
sea shanty.
judged? Sea shanties, for example. Yeah. So I really feel like I'm just in a very steep learning curve, and I'm gathering as much information as I can. And this morning when you messaged me and said that you need a photo and a bio, I thought, I don't have any of those. So
oh, you don't? Now you do.
Right. So thank you.
There you go.
So wrote a bio, and thanks to Dan Tappan, got a great photo I can use. But I literally am starting from zero, and that's really fun. I think there are, at this point in my life, there are not many places where I can sort of jump in and say, I'm clueless, I'm a total beginner, I've got lots to learn, I can ask questions of lots of people, and I'm figuring it out as I go.
Now, in the 90s, when you were with your band, it was quite different.
Yeah.
So what did you do to promote back then?
Well, if you want the real answer,
Sure.
Amy did all the work.
Okay.
I mean, at that point, and to her credit, you know, she had a great sense of it then, and we and she was relentless. She did an amazing job of, you know, getting our tapes out there. But, you know, we were making tapes. Cassette tapes, right? When we finally cut our album, we'd moved into the advanced technology of CD, so we did have that. But, you know, in terms of doing PR for gigs, I was hand drawing postcards and walking them over to the coffee shop, which was next to the copy shop, which was next to the video rental store, and having them copy it and, you know, use the paper cutter and then hand stick the stamps and mail them off. So, you know, this whole new world of, you know, collecting emails through your website and doing email promotions and social media promotions. I do a fair amount of that kind of work in my day-to-day life, so I'm hoping that some of that will transfer.
Okay. And now you can use Vistaprint and not have to go to the copy shop.
No, it's magical. Or even just, you know, the design and graphic tools that we all have access to nowadays. Right. It's astonishing.
Yeah. It's not hand drawing.
Not like when I was a child. So.
I don't know. There's something quaint about those old posters.
I know.
You know,
the zine years.
Yeah, it's like when you look at posters for like school elections now. They're all professional.
Oh, it's super slick.
Right. It used to be, you know, you painted something with your friends. So, you know, vote for me in red paint.
Well, and people's standards are so high now, too, because it is so easy to create, you know, a beautiful album cover and gorgeous liner notes and a fabulous, you know, website using WordPress. So I think the bar is very high. And again, within this community of musicians, the PR that people have created is beautiful. So it's very inspiring.
Yeah. And we also have CD Baby to kind of promote our CDs and our music.
And Spotify. The fact that, you know, getting your music on Spotify is relatively easy. I mean, my 14-year-old is uploading his podcast to the Spotify, as we like to say.
Yeah, this one is too. Yeah, I mean, this is uploaded to all the major ones, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
But, you know, you might be missing somebody if you don't try to hit them all.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So, you know, you reminded me of your sheep song. I want to hear that one.
Are we happy to play
Can
my
we do
sheep
that?
song? Yes.
So this is because I think you should enter this in the upcoming Portsmouth Maritime Folk Festival in New Hampshire.
There wasn't going to be any more of those.
Well, there's going to be a contest. Whether there is a physical festival or not, we're not sure, but there definitely is a contest. Nick Noble, who was on the show, he's a DJ at WICN, and he has committed that he is going to do the contest part where people write sea shanties and there's a contest to determine the best entry. And I think you got a shot. I think yours is a very original song.
Well, yeah. So this is a sheep shanty.
Right.
And the story is, I was reading the New York Times back in November, and a story caught my eye, which was that a cargo ship holding 15,000 sheep had gone down in the Black Sea. And I just was horrified and fascinated by this story and couldn't stop thinking about it. So I wrote,
Black Sea?
Oh, dude.
I had to. I'm sorry.
That's good. I hadn't even thought of that one.
Yeah.
So the joke on this, my sheep shanty, my husband referred to this one as the wreck of the Mutton Fitzgerald.
That's a good one too.
A boat full of sheep left the coast of Romania, headed due south, her course course well-defined. 20 men were aboard, and the sheep 15,000 on a Syrian vessel. They'd named the Queen Hind, they'd named the Queen Hind. Packed muzzle to rump, they were boarded that morning, bound for the slaughter on far distant shores. The Black Sea must have shimmered in the chilly new sunlight, salt air in the hold as the crew slammed the doors, as the crew slammed the doors. Was there one young sheep bundled alongside her sisters, who raised her head, sniffed, sensed adventure ahead, hungry to seek out new pastures for grazing, to break out of habits into which she'd been bred, into which she'd been bred. No one knows just what happened a few moments later, a mechanical failure, a mischievous tide. But the sea, it fell silent, and the gulls hovered watching as the hind wobbled slowly, then keeled to her side, then keeled to her side. And when the call came, it set off a desperate rescue, small fishing boats swarming, casting nets in the sea. A daily catch made up of hoofs, hinds, and shoulders, as the shepherds watched anguished, lined up on the quay, lined up on the quay. Amidships, our sheep knew that this was her moment. A half-open porthole made her woolly brain think. A well-placed kick set her well apart from her sheep mates as she plunged, barely flailing, straight into the drink, straight into the drink. But she was far from alone, like so many soft buoys. Her fellow sheep bobbed as they kicked without cease, their instincts alert as they swam for survival, but were doomed all to drown, weighed down by their fleas, weighed down by their fleas. By nightfall, the rescuers, drenched, spent, and weeping, counted 32 sheep as the ones they could save. The rest of the flock, sunk and soaked in salt water, herded below to a watery grave, to a watery grave. But I like to imagine one sheep missed the count, our brave ewe with muscles and spirit to spare. I see in my mind's eye her hooves scrape the shore, the sea answering the bleat of her brave ovine prayer, of her brave ovine prayer. I see her a-graze in fresh fields of alfalfa, finally free of the shepherds and the men of the sea, finally free just to ramble unshorn and untethered, and to ruminate on being the best sheep she can be, the best sheep she can be. Oh, let's not forget to remember the fallen, each sheep who strove vainly to master the water. Let's honor the moment they broke free of their sheepness and fought to keep living despite certain slaughter, each ewe and her daughter. So take heart, dearest friends, and take heed of this shipwreck. And when you feel like the rough seas of life keep you battling, just remember there are so many ways to be brave. And be the sheep that's the last to go down, bravely paddling. Be the sheep that's the last to go down.
great metaphors there, you know.
Thank you.
You could easily make that song about something else.
Well, funny you should say that. I think about that a lot, and I don't want to kind of overstate it, so I like people to draw their own conclusions.
Yeah,
but I
that's
appreciate
good.
that.
But I can hear, I can think about things that could be
Excellent.
about.
That's great
So,
feedback.
Yeah, and that is good. Keep the mystery.
Exactly.
Everybody else, now that I said that, has to start thinking about it.
What is she writing about?
Yeah. So you lived in New York, and you lived in L.A., you said?
I did.
And you lived in, where else? In Scotland?
So I was in Scotland as a kid, and then Northern California as a kid, and then back to Harvard, and then New York and LA for my adult years, and then back to Harvard. So really, you know, the contrast between big city life and small town living has been extreme, but pretty great. I think there are great parts to both, and I'm really, really glad that I lived in both of those places. And for this time in my life, I'm really, really glad to be back in a small town and be embedded in the community. I was listening to your episode with Mark and Rayanne, and they had a lot of really wonderful things to say about their small town life, and a lot of that just really resonated with me, because I think there's something just really meaningful about knowing people over many years, and you may not even know them well or be super close with them, but just the fact that you are growing up in the same space, and that your kids are growing up together, and that you're seeing each other in lots of different contexts at the town meeting or down at the pond or at the Christmas pageant or the dump. You build connections over time, and there's something really lovely about that. And having left for 20 years and then having come back, I expected a lot to have changed, and I was actually shocked that so many of my cohort from my generation ended up oozing back over time, because I think the same things were drawing us, was this really feeling this need to feel connected to people in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I had a different experience because I moved around a lot, and it was usually a city, but I did live in the Midwest, and then I was born in California too, so I understand what you're saying about, you know, you always have these moments with people that are a moment in time and place that sometimes you can get back and sometimes just goes away.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're in a small town, you're more likely to get it back.
Yeah, I think so. And I think having moved around so much when I was a little kid, that by the time we got to Harvard, I thought, this is my place. And there was something about that was really important to me, and I feel like I was from somewhere.
Well, I'm from New Hampshire now. I've been there long enough that, you know, that sort of becomes your identity at a certain point. But you know, growing up in different places, you try to adopt, you try everything on, right? You try on what it's like to be from there. And sometimes it's not a good fit. And sometimes it is a good fit.
Right.
I mean, I was from Canada for a while.
Right. Well, and sometimes it just highlights different parts of your personality or who you are in that moment, right?
Right. So you have an album coming out that is about how many songs?
It'll be somewhere between 8 and 10. I've been writing a lot more in the past year. I am not a prolific writer. I'm not someone that songs are just flowing out all the time. I'm pretty methodical, and bringing a song to fruition feels like a lot of work, not in a bad way. But I'm not someone who's got this huge treasure trove, and I think I get to cherry pick. So I feel like every one that I do needs to be crafted. But I love that process, and I think a lot about how having to be a writer for leveled readers, for example, for these third grade books, actually really informed that a lot. That when you write those books, you are writing to a very specific reading level. So there are certain words you can and can't use. You're writing to word count. And so you're having to continually edit and hone and find one word that will work for 12 words and simplify ideas and condense. And that's what songwriting is, right? Is a good song is like the most concentrate that you could possibly get to. And, I'll look at a song sometimes and feel like, there are lazy words in there. There's got to be a better way to take that whole line and just turn it into a single word, because everybody will know that'll be shorthand for an emotion or a place or a kind of person.
And so here's a question. Did you ever write a kid's song? Which is simplified.
Yes. None of which I'm prepared to play tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, the school where I taught in Los Angeles is a very arts-focused school, and I wrote a number of songs that are actually still being sung by the children today. So
great. I think the sheep song could be perhaps tailored a bit to become a kid's song.
Oh boy, it's such a sad story, though. All the dead sheep.
I know, but that's why I say tailored.
So it's a happy ending and they all float to safety?
Something like that, yeah. I could see it. I mean, the melody's simple and,
yeah,
it could be good.
Yeah, definitely.
I can hear a kid song in there.
Right.
That's what why I'm saying that.
Well, it's a fine line between a kid's song and a grown-up song. We listen to a lot of They Might Be Giants at my house.
Oh, yeah.
And the quote-unquote kids albums are just so fantastic, and I don't know what makes them not grown-up albums except for that they're silly. And
there are jokes for grown-ups in them. I mean, that's the whole time.
So great. Oh my gosh.
I love like the Bloodmobile.
The list could go on forever.
Yeah, the Archaeologist song.
And P.S. The guitarist on our album from a million years ago is now the guitarist for They Might Be Giants.
Oh, yeah?
Dan Miller.
They're great.
Oh, they're amazing. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, and their kids' albums are actually the ones I like listening to the best, because there's so many songs on there too. It's like they're all short, but there's like 25 songs.
It's a deep trove. Awesome. Definitely.
And they did Istanbul, not Constantinople, and I know a little trivia about that. That was actually not by them, but the song is actually an answer to an old song that was about Constantinople, and then somebody said, no, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. And it's like a joke that nobody gets because no one knows the original. But if you go to YouTube, you can find it. So are you, what's your taste in music typically?
It's pretty eclectic. I like so many singer-songwriters, Joni Mitchell is far and away sort of the hugest influence on my own kind of thinking about songwriting. I think her lyrics are genius, and I literally remember the moment that I think it was WZLX in the 80s would do the night where they would just play like a whole A-side or a B-side of an album, and I remember listening to Blue and it just blowing my mind and thinking, how does somebody do something like that?
Well, that still blows my mind. That's a great album.
Yeah. So, Joni Mitchell is definitely up there. I've been listening to just a lot of singer-songwriters lately. Lucy Kaplansky, do you know?
I like her.
She's amazing. Dar Williams, of course. Mary Gauthier.
I love the Babysitter song, Dar Williams.
Yes,
Yes.
But yeah, those storytelling songs really speak to me. I feel like when you can sort of whisk someone up so that they have to listen to the end of the song and they have to kind of get to the end of your story, you've done a great job.
And the Christians and the Pagans is also a favorite.
Yeah. Well, that whole Mortal City album and the lights in the hospital and
that one is very disturbing.
And beautiful. Just
it is
completely
but
undoes
it's like
me.
what is it? It's just what is it about? And it's like something you can listen to and it's puzzling. What it's really
amazing.
saying. But it's really it's a great song. The whole album, like you said. And February, that's also a really good one. I threw my keys in the water, and when I looked back, they sunk back down in the ice. Yeah. It's a great line. what do you have to play from the new album? Did you play anything from there?
I've got lots that I can share from there. I am going to do a song that I wrote a couple years ago. This is a song I actually wrote about a girl I knew from elementary school from Harvard. And when I moved back to town, she was there, and she was there with her 2 kids. And she passed away a couple summers ago. And she'd had a pretty rough road at the end. She ended up moving up to Maine, where she spent some time in a homeless shelter. But through it all, she worked so hard to take care of her kids and make sure that her boys were fine and that they were safe. And all of us back home were kind of keeping track of her day to day through Facebook. She was posting really avidly on Facebook, and every day she'd post, well, it's day 19, and these are all the things we did. And it was just these very detailed descriptions. And you could tell from her descriptions that she was just working so hard to create a sense of normalcy for her kids. And so I wanted to find a way to honor that after her passing. She really, being a good mom was absolutely the most important thing to her. Well, it's day 23 at the Grace Hope Mission. I get the boys on the school bus and head back to the church, where I'll help to sort clothes for the thrift shop and talk with that lady who always remembers to ask how I'm doing. Then I'll check at the office and they'll check on my papers. Then it's back to the bus stop to pick up the boys and check in and make sure that their homework is done and they're safe. Don't you know we're so lucky we 3 have each other? And it might not seem like much of a day to you, but I've learned how to lean on routine and feel safe anywhere. I can take it from there. Day 79 at the Grace Hope Mission, and summer has come to Lewiston, Maine, and the days can get long with the boys, but we're finding some places to go that are safe and where people are kind. Well, the library's quiet, we all love to read, and sometimes the boys play a video game, and on hot days we walk to the fountain where the boys catch the drops in their hands as they splash from black slabs of stone. And it might not seem like much of a day to you, but I've learned how to lean on routine and feel safe anywhere. I can take it from there. The paths we carve from day to day, they bind us to ourselves and to no other. A map etched on our hearts that shows the way to home is simply through each other. Day 126 at the Grace Hope Mission. They tell me it's settled, and just 3 days more, then we'll go back to Farmington, our own
much of a day to you, but I've learned how to lean on routine and feel safe anywhere. I can take it from there. And it might not seem like much of a day to you, take it from there. I can take it.
So that's great.
Thanks.
So when you write your songs, how do you determine they're going to be on the album?
If I want to only be singing them and nothing else. I mean, really, it's, there's songs where you write them and you're like, oh, that's good. And then it just kind of sits in the notebook. And then, but the ones that kind of are stuck in my head, like an earworm, those are the ones that float to the top for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Did you work with Doug on which ones, or did you just pick?
No, I think I just picked. I brought them in. I gave him right of opinion sharing, but he was very supportive.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it's been fun sort of deciding. And I think for me, the next thing that's going to be really interesting is figuring out the order. Because I feel like that matters a lot to me, because I feel like you want a good flow of songs and you want it to build in the right way. And I don't delude myself that the number of people who actually listen to an album from start to finish is zero.
Right.
But
unless they're people from our generation.
Right, exactly. And there's some albums, like I was listening to Hadestown last night, and you can't listen to that out of order. You have to listen to it
right
in order.
Right.
So,
well, that's a show too. I mean, there's a narrative, and there's It's like Les Mis or any of those. You know, you have to listen to those in order. But even when you listen to something like Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by Smashing Pumpkins, from the 90s, that kind of era, or the White Album by the Beatles.
All of them. All of them. It's a craft, right? You got to figure out that narrative build.
Yeah, so next when you do a double album, it'll be even harder, right?
Right. Oh, that feels like so much work.
Yeah. Oh, it is, I'm sure.
I know.
So you don't write on demand usually, it sounds like.
I do and I don't. I've learned in the past couple years with sort of phase 2 of Erin Sullivan songwriter that I have to kind of calendar myself in, and I actually do need to sit myself down and close the doors and get something out there. And I've got my notebook of ideas, and but often I'll start with a prompt. I'll treat myself as my own student, and I'll say pull a phrase out of a book, or go back to your journal entry. I do a lot of journaling, and the course that I teach at the ukulele camp is called From Journal to Song, because I feel like when people start to do songwriting and they're thinking about matching the melody to the lyrics, they're putting too much pressure on themselves, and so much of it is you have to get to the idea first. So if you give yourself the freedom to get it down in the journal and write what I call the craptastic version and just get all the words out there, then you can cherry pick, and you're going to find a phrase that leaps out at you or a word that leaps out at you, and that's going to be the thing that drives the excitement. So that's kind of the way that I've been liking to work lately. And the hard part is you'll sort of see the idea float, and you'll grab at it, and you'll maybe get a verse or you'll get a chorus. But for me, the pivotal point is actually staying in the room until you get a draft of the song down. Because personally, I feel like if you write a verse and a chorus and you say, oh, that's great, and then you walk away from it, it's never going to get done, because you're going to go back to it when the moment has passed, and you're going to say, oh, that's a piece of garbage, or I forget what I was, and I have the tape of myself, but I don't get it, and you throw it away. And so for me, I feel like I have to sit with the discomfort and really push myself until the draft is done, and then you can make the draft better. but you always feel so good when the song is done that you're motivated to keep working on it.
How's that different from, say, writing one of the books that you read?
That's a really good question. I guess it's not that different, actually. It's kind of the same process, right? You do the research, you've got pages of research, and then you've got your structure over here. And now how are you going to take all of this content and smoosh it down, right? Mm-hmm. It's like making diamonds. Not that my songs are diamonds, but you have to keep compressing until you get
Maybe they are diamonds, you never know.
Diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
Right.
Or rubies. Could be either one.
I just want them to be done. And that's the other thing about this next phase is I think I was really concerned in version 1 about how people were going to perceive the songs and whether the songs were cool enough or whatever. And at this point, I am having so much fun with the creative process and getting the words out and getting the sound, and then working with somebody like Doug to make the sound whole. It's so gratifying, and being able to play songs for people is great too. But it's, for me, the process is just being a blast.
Mm-hmm. There's actually some interesting stories you can look at, because songwriters lately have done a lot of writing about their process. And the one that I came across a few years ago that was fascinating was Leonard Cohen, who, he talked about writing Hallelujah, which is, the song for a while. It's just so classic. And he said it had like hundreds of verses. And he had to pick which verses, but he just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. So he had like hundreds of verses to pick from. And when Jeff Buckley wanted to cover it, he said, "Here," and handed him all the verses.
Whoa, that's a great story.
But yeah, and there's some great stuff on songwriting. You can find a few books out there, Songwriters on Songwriting, if you haven't seen that one. And so when you give people advice, we're at that point, what kind of advice do you give them about how to work in music?
Well, I'm the advice taker right now, not the advice giver. But, I think from my vantage point, my recommendation to folks is just to get out there and do stuff. And I truly think there's no better place than Massachusetts right now, or New England, for being part of the open mic community. I've never seen such a supportive group of people. It's being so much fun, and I feel like there's a lot of room for lots of different kinds of voices, and that makes for a very fertile ground and lots of inspiration when you go listen to other people.
I think you're right, because in other places they have open mics, but the sheer number we have is staggering.
Yeah, and they're just not competitive, and they're listening spaces. It's like the hearing room, right? That you can go to the Lincoln open mic or the Westford open mic or TCAN or whatever, and there are people who are genuinely interested.
And don't forget the Burn.
And the Burn, I know, tomorrow night. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Where people are genuinely interested in what you have to say and how you're saying it, and it's so validating.
Yeah, and if you're going to do music, you have to have some feedback. Otherwise, you don't know if it's good.
Yeah.
Because it's not for just you.
Right. Right.
So, all right. Well, I would like to hear another song from the album, if you can.
I would love to sing another song. I'm going to be brave.
Okay.
And do my open tuning song, which...
And that's a Seagull guitar.
It is a Seagull. This is actually my daughter's guitar. Okay.
Those are nice guitars. I've seen them.
I really like this guitar a lot.
And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the fading light. And I caught him looking at his own reflection in department store windows by the In department store windows by the fading light, So I told him with the greatest of affection, look out, darling, or you just might get a lot of what you're cooking. I get used to gazing a one-man show. Really, it's amazing. Can you lean on loneliness, live on your pride, when a man like you needs a woman like me beside? I've got a friend who lost her lover in the kitchen at a marbled counter on a Monday night. He found her holding up slides and wrapping up linen, looking for the shadow behind the light. There's a lot of what you're looking at. Get used to gazing a one-man show. Really, it's amazing. Can you lean on loneliness, live on your pride, when a man like you needs a woman like me beside? I got a mouth full of nails and a pocket full of pictures, and my bottle of poems tastes like pale moonlight. And then I caught me looking at my own reflection, thinking about the way that you felt last night. There's a lot of what you're looking at. Get used to gazing. I'm a one-man show. Really, I'm amazing. If I said I'd make it easy, well, baby, I lied. 'Cause a man like you needs a woman like me beside.
It's very nice.
Thank you.
And that sounded kind of James Taylor-ish, the style.
Oh.
It sounded good.
Thank you.
With the open chords and the...
Yeah.
I don't
it's a
think
fun
he
one.
he doesn't always do it open, but I guess the picking pattern and the way you were doing it
Yeah.
has a certain Taylor thing.
Yeah.
So what else do you have to tell us?
I don't know what I have to tell you. I've loved the podcast so far, and I've been so excited. We were talking about this before you started recording, just to get to know all of the musicians in the community and hear their backstories and realize that everybody is coming up to that mic with a tale to tell and a really interesting context. And there are many working musicians in this community, but almost everybody is also coming from a place where they have another area of expertise. And there are teachers, and there are writers, and there are technical writers, and a lot of writers and a lot of teachers, actually, now that I think about it.
Right.
But I love hearing how people's other lives bleed into their lives as musicians. And I think that's one of the great benefits of being a little bit older and a musician, is that you've got this sort of wisdom and experience to share.
Actually, there's one group that are songwriters that I haven't really covered as much, and besides writers and teachers, physicists.
Yes, that too, which I think is so
There's a few of
fascinating.
them.
I would love to.
Rich Albert.
Albert.
And who else? Gary Blanchard. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
And
Dan
I think-
Tappan is a scientist, and I think
Yeah.
I'm blanking on all the, but there's a lot of them, and
Yeah.
I would love to know what that Venn diagram is, right? What
Yeah.
part of your brain makes you want to be
Doctors,
an engineer or a
physicists,
physicist, and also a songwriter.
Yeah. It's it's all left brain. I think it's logical. It fits together. It works.
Yeah.
So this has been fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So people can. You don't have a website right now, so
There's going to be a website. It's going to be erinsullivan.com.
I saw it.
And
it says,
did you see
coming
when she's
soon.
actually? Did you see at the top? It says when she's not dreaming about the moon.
Yes, I did.
Yep,
That was,
now you understand.
Now I get it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I saw
Yep,
it.
that's Dan Sullivan's very funny reference.
But there's
No,
nothing
no.
there, and
Nope.
there should be.
There's going to be some wonderful content soon. So
Okay,
stay tuned.
Good. And you're working on that.
Working on it.
Okay. Well, that's good. And in the meantime, you're playing at open mics
I'm
everywhere.
playing at open mics everywhere. I think I'm going to be the mini feature at Ellen Schmidt's open mic in Boxborough this fall. So
Okay.
that's very exciting to me. And I'm going to be part of a show that Linda Marks is doing in April at the Burren in honor of the animals in our lives.
Oh, yep.
So-
She's really into that,
Yep.
the buddy dog thing.
Yep.
She has cute pictures of her dog every day. So,
Yep. So very exciting.
all right. Well, I guess I'll be seeing you around soon. So you can look online, look for Erin Ash Sullivan, and
And look at her not website.
she'll soon have a website, erinashsullivan.com. And if you want to check her out on Facebook, I think she's somewhere around there. Other than that, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And we want to thank the Greenville Junction Shop, as usual. And we want to mention that the Hearing Room is at hearingroom.net, so you can go to that to become a member or find out about our schedule. And have a great week.
If you start with a dream and share it with some friends, the idea deepens and grows. The dream takes shape, it has form and substance, a community soon arose. A listening room, the hearing room, a place to find a home to play. A listening room, the hearing room, express yourself and have your say. The walls are thin, sirens blare, the tables sit near folding chairs, the stage is set,